In 1977, a small factory in Colvin, Leicester got to work on something that would change the lives of countless people. Little did they realise that people were still caring enough 40 years later to sit and listen to a guy waffle on about that product. This is the Star Wars Toy Podcast.
Hello there. Yes, this is the Star Wars Toy Podcast, and I am Darth Mark. Welcome to episode 5. On this week's show, I'm going to be having the Star Wars tracker as usual, and the news later on. But the article this week is going to be a bit of a rant about Hasbro. I just want to talk about the state of play with Hasbro. It's not all bad. I'm going to go through a bit of information about them, what I like and what I dislike about them. But as always, we start off with this.
The Star Wars Tracker Report.
Welcome to the latest market report for this week. There was nearly 50 grand worth of Star Wars items bought this week. A lot of that were probably me. But I think what I bought is probably going to be on next week's tracker. We'll start off with the top 5 loose figures. Number 5, we have Blue Snaggletooth with Dent. Kenner, sold it in the United States at $460. At number 4, Yak Face, Kenner, United States, $479. At number 3, we have another Yak Face, Kenner, sold again in the United States for $490. I've just bought a Yak Face and it was a lot cheaper than that. Number 2, this is from Kenner, United States, $585. But at number 1, we have a Luke Skywalker fanboy DT Saber. I'm looking out for one of those. At $765 United States dollars. On to the top 5 accessories. Number 5, we had a Snowspeeder, Kenner, Empire Strikes Back C, 11 back with playsets. Sold in the United States for $492. At number 4, we have a Land Speeder Meccano Star Wars A, red Meccano logo. Sold in France for €483. At number 3, we have Han Solo 12-inch Lily Ledy Loose. Sold in the United States for $610. At number 2, we have a B-Wing Fighter AFA 85, Kenner, Return of the Jedi A Space Scene, sold in the United States for $679. But at number 1, we have the Imperial TIE Fighter, Star Wars B, Imperial TIE Fighter title, sold in the United States for $1,650. On to the mint on card figures now. At number 5, we have a General Madine AFA 70Y, Tall Toys Return of the Jedi 65A, sold in Australia for $860 Australian dollars. At number 4, R2D2 Droids Card 12A, United States $788. At number 3, we have a C3PO Droids, Kenner, Canada, Droids 12A, United States $798. At number 2, we have a Cloth Cape Jawa AFA 80, Kenner Star Wars 12B, sold in the United States for £825. And at number 1, we have a Chewbacca AFA 80 Meccano Star Wars 12A, sold in the United States for $3,582. And that's your Star Wars tracker for this week. I did used to break it out down a bit more. There is the coins and the daily prices and what's being sold every day and what's being sold in all the different countries. I mean, it's all a bunch of numbers really. But if you want me to go ahead and read all those, let me know. If you want me to read out the coins, I know we don't have a big coin collecting community in this country. They all seem to be sold in the United States. Most of it has been sold in the United States this week with the high stuff. We'll see next week. We'll keep an eye on that. And if you want to see the coin prices, we can do that too. It's all about fine tuning this podcast. We're only into episode 5, and it will evolve into different areas Hopefully a better podcast for you to listen to. Get more listeners, definitely. And if you want to get this tracker report every week, usually on Sunday I get them through email, you can get on to the StarWarsTracker.com. If you pay $30 or $25 if you put our code TSW-25, it's an invaluable source for all vintage Star Wars collectors. I'd definitely be lost without it.
Where is the rubber band? You're ruining my plan.
Down the street, just go down the street.
They've got the ultimate power in the universe, and before it gets better, it's getting worse. It's not a satellite, but it can light.
Whenever you want to make a Star Wars toy, you need a Star Wars license. And that should be pretty common knowledge. Lucasfilm and Disney protect their intellectual property, and whoever wants to make anything based on Star Wars needs a licensing agreement. Now, these agreements are usually secret other than some very basic facts. No specific details are released, so it's usually very difficult to know how much money is involved. While digging through the internet, I was able to find a licensing agreement between Hasbro and Lucasfilm from October 1997, an agreement that was extended several times in the meantime until 2020. And while redacted, it's very informative, so informative that if you're interested in this kind of thing, I'd go search that out on the internet. You may be very surprised. Also, a very interesting question will be answered. Who actually owns anything Hasbro makes? First up, the licensing agreement I reference is easily found on the internet. It's freely available for anyone to read, and it's not a secret. It's been redacted, and a few details of several pages of paragraphs are missing, but the info that is available is still very interesting. In this article, I will first tell you in detail how much money Hasbro has to pay for the privilege of making Star Wars toys, and then I will highlight a few key points from the agreement that will be of interest of any collector. So even while the article is long, I will encourage you to listen to it if you are even remotely interested in how much money Hasbro has to pay to Disney and what other things they need to do to keep Disney happy. Because once you know the details, it should be much clearer as to why Hasbro does things the way that they do. One word of warning, the licensing agreement is written in legalese and it's very dry reading. So I'll try my best to keep it entertaining. So first up, the most important question, how much money is involved? The license agreement in question is from October 1997. Back then it covered all the prequel movies and there was a 10-year deal. The original draft of the agreement said that Hasbro had to pay $450 million for the 3 movies in advance of the minimum guarantee. The minimum guarantee is the sum of the licensor had to pay no matter what. However, shortly thereafter there was a first amendment to this agreement and Lucasfilm and Hasbro agreed on a much higher minimum guarantee. Instead of $450 million, Hasbro now had to pay $590 million for the 3 movies, more than $500 million US. The new agreement then was as follows. Hasbro had to pay $100 million on initial shipment of Episode 1 toys. Hasbro then had to pay $250 million on the theatrical release of Episode 1. Hasbro had to pay $120 million once Episode 2 was released, and Hasbro had to pay yet another $120 million once Episode 3 was released. And that agreement held for a while, but then in 2003, Hasbro and Lucasfilm extended the agreement to 2018. And then 2003, the previous agreement upon minimum guarantee was lowered from $590 million to $505 million, probably because the lower that it was expected performance of Episode 2 in the box office. Hasbro had, up to this point, already paid $470 million to Lucasfilm, so the minimum guarantee had almost been paid off in full. But then things changed again when Lucas sold his company to Disney and Disney announced new movies. New movies were not covered by the old agreement, and thus in 2013 the agreement was amended and extended once more, this time until 2020. Because of the newly announced movies, the minimum guarantee was raised by another $225 million. So to sum it all up, since 1997, the Star Wars license cost Hasbro a minimum guarantee at least $730 million. It is unknown if Episode 9, Solo, and the upcoming live action show Resistance and the TCW are part of the deal from 2013. Only 3 movies were mentioned back then, and if Disney raised the minimum guarantee once more in the meantime. However, the minimum guarantee is not all there is, since it is, as the name implies, just a minimum. This is what Hasbro has to pay no matter what. But Hasbro also has to pay royalties. Now the royalty fee is redacted in this document. However, back in the 1990s, industries estimated the royalty fee that Lucasfilm would be north of 15%. That's 15% or even more of the wholesale price what Hasbro sells the figures for to retailers. Basically 15+% of Hasbro's Star Wars net sales. Actually, the Star Wars episode, the show The Toys That Made Us, gives the exact number. The royalty rate was given at 18% in the 1990s by the lawyer who negotiated with Lucasfilm. Before that, it was a mere 5%, and George Lucas was very unhappy about that deal. And back then, this was the most expensive toy licensing agreement ever. Usually, a licensee only pays royalty fees once the minimum guarantee has been paid off. So if Hasbro paid $250 million on release of Episode 1, they would only pay the royalties once the Star Wars toy net sales exceeded $250 million for the episode. And these royalties are increased 20% of the net sales in 2015. Hasbro's Star Wars license for the past 21 years cost them a total of at least $730 million, plus at first 18% and then 20% of Star Wars toys net sales. Hasbro's operating margin in the past years was between 11.5 and 15.5%. In 2018, it's a little more than 12%, which simply means one thing. First Lucasfilm and now Disney make more money off the Star Wars toys than Hasbro themselves. Just think about that for a while. Now, a more common royalty fee in the toy industry is something like 10%. In other words, the Star Wars toy license is the most expensive toy license out there, which is why only a big player, a global toy company such as Hasbro, is able to afford it. For reference, when the Star Wars license was extended in 2013, the Marvel license was extended too, also until 2020. And the minimum guarantee for Marvel was $80 million, roughly a third of what Hasbro has to pay for a minimum guarantee for Star Wars. This gives you an idea how expensive the Star Wars toy license is. It is interesting to note that the minimum guarantee for the then announced 3 new Disney era movies was relatively modest, $225 million, compared to that of the $590 million, later $505 million for the prequel movies, which probably tells us that Disney might not have been too sure about the commercial success of the new movies back in 2013. Hasbro's advance payment for The Force Awakens was a mere $75 million. For Episode 1, Hasbro had to pay a total of $350 million in advance. But Disney increased the royalties instead in 2015, a few short weeks before The Force Awakens was released. Disney probably had the box office predictions by then and knew that the movie would be a huge success. Royalties were now a hefty 20%, which is about twice as much as usually demanded for a toy license. Higher royalties may earn Disney more money in the long run than asking for a higher minimum guarantee. While Hasbro does not list how much was paid in royalties for Star Wars specifically, they do list how many royalties they paid overall in a year. On Hasbro's website, the records date back to 2007, so we can't say for sure how much was paid during the prequel movie years. Again, this is a bunch of numbers, but I'm just going to go through them quickly. 2007, $360 million. 2008, $330 million. 2009, $330 million. 2010, $248 million. 2011, $339 million. And I'll just go through them year by year. You know which year. 302 million, 338 million, 305 million, 379 million, 409 million, 405 million, and 2018, 135 million for the first 6 months. Remember, Hasbro doesn't have to pay royalties for Star Wars. They also have the Marvel license. They have the Disney Princesses and Frozen. They used to have the Jurassic Park World license, amongst other things. It is known, however, how much money Hasbro made from Star Wars toys from 2010 to 2015. The net sales 2010 was $245 million, 2011 $215 million, 2012 $303 million, 2013 $187 million, 2014 $205 million, and 2015 440 million, so a big jump there. Given a royalty fee of 18% and then 20% since 2015. Accumulated royalty fees in the period between 2010 and 2015 may account for about 260 million. But then there are royalty fees for the time between 1997 and 2010, when Star Wars toys were probably a lot hotter in the period between the movies, when no new movies were on the horizon and only the Clone Wars was on TV. So my very, very rough estimate is that Hasbro may have paid about $1.5 billion in the minimum guarantees and royalties to Lucasfilm in the past 21 years. These are a lot of details, and all you need to remember is that Star Wars toy license is insanely expensive, and that Lucasfilm Disney most likely make more money off the toys than Hasbro makes themselves. If we take the operating margin as an indicator of how much money Hasbro does keep in the end. I'll be honest with you here, I was going to have a rant about Hasbro. And I'm not saying they don't make mistakes, they do. They made a lot. They have become a lot better company in the past few years, listening to us collectors more. But researching this piece today, I've come across a few things that are interesting. Obviously that last article, you tend to side with Hasbro a bit more. I was going to go on about the future of the Star Wars license, and I don't think they will be as enthusiastic as I thought they would be to keep that license. I did think that all the power would be with Disney, but I don't think it will, reading through that article, as it did say that Disney are very restricted as to how many companies can afford the license. It would be interesting to be a fly on the wall in that negotiation. So on to the possible future of the Star Wars license. US toy company Mattel suffered quite a loss earlier this week. Warner Brothers decided not to extend the DC Comics Boys to action toy license with Mattel, and instead gave the license to Canadian toy manufacturer Spin Master, beginning in 2020. Spin Master is a much smaller company compared to Mattel. Their revenue in 2017 was $1.55 billion US dollars compared to Mattel's $4.88 billion US dollars. Hasbro made $5.21 billion. You may know Spin Masters from toys such as Air Hogs. There are a few Star Wars Air Hogs, more recent Hatchimals. Now, why exactly is Mattel losing most of its DC Comics license news? On a Star Wars toy podcast, it's because the article about the DC Comics license deal in the LA Times also mentions the analytics now believe that Mattel might try to aggressively pursue other licenses to fill the whole DC Comics has left behind. And Goldman Sachs analyst remarks that Hasbro's Star Wars and Marvel license expires in 2020, just when Mattel will lose most of its DC license. They will only keep DC Comics preschool and girl toys. So let's speculate a bit here. In the past, the Star Wars license was extended well in advance, long before it expired. But now we're fast approaching 2020, and there's not much time left until the license expires. So what is different this time? Why haven't we heard from Hasbro and Disney extending the license yet? One reason might be disappointing sale figures and the exorbitant cost of the Star Wars license. The license is set to be the most expensive toy license on the planet, with license fees of at least 20% plus exorbitant minimum guarantees. It may very well be that Hasbro feels that this is a time to regenerate the license and to demand better terms. This is not without precedence. When the prequels failed to be the huge box office hit, Lucasfilm did reduce the minimum guarantees when the license was extended well in advance. Hasbro had to pay many millions less in minimum guarantees than originally agreed upon. But maybe there's another option. Mattel had been considered a takeover candidate for a long time now. Mattel's situation is not the best. The stock price dropped from almost 40% in 2018. Hasbro's stock fell by a little more than 11%. It was not an easy year for toy companies thanks to Toys R Us demise, but Mattel has been in stormy waters for a long time now, and they're really struggling in Europe and elsewhere. With Mattel's stock so low, a company such as Disney would not need to pay that much actually to take over. So maybe Disney's one party not wanting to extend the license, and they're still weighing all the options. We don't know. As I said, it's speculation. One thing is certain, the Star Wars license will expire in 2020, and Hasbro will either keep the license or someone else will take over. Mattel is now in dire need of some licensed toy lines. The Jurassic World line did okay, fans really like the toys too, but DC action figures will be sorely missed by Mattel, and Star Wars and/or Mattel will fill that gap quite nicely. The transition could be relatively seamless if everything Hasbro ever made for Star Wars, all the designs, molds, sculpts and digital assets, are property of Lucasfilm Disney, and they can give it to whoever will have the license in 2020. So, in theory, Mattel could make the vintage collection, the Black Series, instead of Hasbro, and everything could easily look the same. So what do you think? Would you want someone else to get the Star Wars license? Before you say yeah, sure, and Hasbro are the worst, think of this though. Any new company would operate under the same unfavourable conditions as Hasbro, unless Disney change their tune and demand less fees and don't keep essential designs or characters a secret even from their own licensees. In my opinion, Hasbro does a great job given the conditions they operate under. As I said, I have berated Hasbro before, but reading through these, I've a much better understanding of their position and a bit more empathy. Remember, the license is extremely expensive, about twice as expensive as any other toy license, and the licensor didn't think giving the details about Crate Luke well in advance was something they needed to do because they considered him top secret. So there was no Crate Luke by any company at any time the movie released in 2017. What happens? We should have a clearer picture soon, as 2020 is not that far away, and any new deal or license extension should be announced months in advance. I'm really torn in this because Hasbro is an offshoot of Kenner. They did buy out Kenner, so they really are Kenner in a way. Giving it to Mattel is giving it to the enemy, I would have thought. I would like to see some different direction, maybe, in this line. The retro collection, that Darth Vader, prototype Darth Vader, I don't know where they're going with things like that. Why waste the time on things like that? Make something different. It's leave the customs to these people on eBay. And I think it's telling and most plausible that Disney will buy out Mattel, keep the license for themselves, keep it in-house. The mouse is going to rule the world. So what do you think? What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? What do you think will happen? Drop me an email, poolharvesttoys@gmail.com. Going forward, I'm going to have discussions. I'm going to have collectors on. I intend to have interviews with certain people. I've got one in the pipeline. I won't say anything about it just yet, but he's a big collector and very knowledgeable. So look forward to that in the coming weeks. But before that, let's have some news. A lot of new lines were brought out in last week's San Diego Comic-Con. The newest Star Wars Luke Skywalker action figure was unveiled, and it promises to look super Skywalker-y, with a realistic rubber exterior skin and internal skeletal structure. It makes it poses that can be held. Hasbro's Skywalker joins the toy maker Star Wars The Black Series Hyper line, which is so far includes an 8-inch Darth Vader. The figures are higher end than the standard figures in the Black Series line, with seamless joints and 28 points of hyper articulation that allow for a variety of poses. The Hyper Real line was inspired by the growing popularity of the toy photographs on Instagram and decided to make those pictures more realistic, the designers have said. Stop motion maquettes are definitely part of what spawned the internal structure. We wanted something that would not only be poseable, but would be able to hold that pose. So internally, we'll find a full steel structure articulated maquette. This look is based on Mark Hamill's appearance in the character in Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. The $80 set, that's about £71, will be out in fall of 2020, so in about another just over a year. We'll include a figure, 13 accessories and a figure stand. So it's more like a Hot Toys, really cheaper version of Hot Toys. Amongst other reveals were the Galaxy Adventures 5-inch figures. They look more like the toy box figures to me. I'm not so sure what the direction they are going with that. It's something I'd wanted to talk about today with the Hasbro story, and it's definitely something I'm going to talk about in the future. So the first 4 figures in this line are C-3PO, Chewbacca, Han Solo and Darth Vader. But by far the best reveal that came out last week was the Boba Fett Black Series helmet. I'm quite interested. I did get a Black Series Darth Vader helmet, which was awesome. The Red 5 helmet I'm quite interested in when it does come down in price. But this Boba Fett helmet is definitely something that I am going to get when it's eventually released next year. Especially with the slide down viewfinder that actually works. I just don't know what sound effects they'd have in the helmet. You can pre-order that now for $120 with free shipping, and it's slated for release in May. On to something I'm going to talk in greater detail in the next few weeks, is the retro collection. I've ordered some. It came out that pre-orders for August were available on Entertainment Earth. I've ordered mine through Darkside Toys weeks ago. They had August in mind months ago, so I don't know why that is news, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting them, seeing them. They're not the first wave that were a Target exclusive. I have heard that they're being remodelled, retooled. I hope so, because apparently the Han Solo wouldn't hold his gun. None of them hold the guns. Yeah, some of the vintage line didn't hold their guns, but that was then. This is now. I don't think that they expected anybody to get these out of the packaging, to be honest with you. I don't think I'd take mine out of the packaging. Definitely won't anyway. But the figure that I want is that Grand Moff Tarkin. I don't really want to buy the game. I might have to pay a bit extra and try and get it on eBay. They're very scarce at the moment. I don't know why. They're supposed to be on Amazon for pre-order, but I can't find them. I'll keep looking. I definitely want one of those. That is the way they should be going. They should make the figures that they didn't make back in the vintage line. They would make a nice addition. I may get slated for saying that, but I'm not interested in these retro collection. I'm pretty much against them, to be honest with you. I am getting some, yes, I know. But I think if they're going to go down this route, they should just do the unreleased figures. Biggs, Wedge, Porkins will be popular, and of course Slave Leia. But we know we're not going to get that because they're not doing that figure anymore, apparently. So more of that and less of multicoloured prototype, with air quotes, Darth Vader's. So on to something else that I really want. I really want everything, but is the Arcade 1-Up arcade machine of Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I just want it for the sound effects, to be honest with you. They are now available for pre-order exclusively with GameStop.com and be shipping in mid-October. I have tried to get on this website, but we're not allowed to have any, surprisingly. Yeah, I know. The shipping would be horrendous on that. But I will hold out hope. I know the sail barge did arrive in these shores, and that was quite big, but this is a lot bigger, obviously. Maybe. I'll always hold out hope. And finally, if you're popping near a Lego store this weekend, they have up to 50% off some of their Star Wars Lego. The sets on offer are the Imperial at Hauler, down from £90 to £54. The Imperial Convex Transport, down from £80 to £56. Snook's Throne Room, from £65 to £45. Morlock's Land Speeder, down from £45 to £27. Han Solo's Land Speeder, down from £26 to £16. And the Jedi and Clone Trooper Battle Pack, down from £13 to £8. So no excuse for you not to start building this weekend. So that'll just about do it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, if you want to leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, I am giving away 9-num Funko Pop. So get out there this weekend, get collecting, let me know what you find out there. I'd like to know where you shop for your vintage or even your modern toys. We're restricted these days with Toys R Us gone down the pan. But I would like to know about any vintage place that sells Star Wars. It would be nice to get a guide together for all collectors. But remember not to blow your budget. Keep it fun and basically enjoy yourself. I know I am. Until next week, may the toys be with you. Plus our first 18% and then 20% off Star Wars Tales